Welcome to Cinema Bites, your go-to for movie recaps in a flash. Big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. The movie begins. In a post-apocalyptic future, a group of rebels tries to defeat a corporation called Wicked, which conducts experiments on children to find a cure for a deadly virus. When a train carrying Wicked cargo and prisoners appears on the tracks, two rebel vehicles start following it. Jorge and Brenda head in one direction, while Thomas and Vince go in another to create a distraction. Brenda fires at the train drivers, who immediately call for backup. Soon, guards emerge and open fire, forcing Jorge to drive while returning fire. Vince moves his vehicle closer to the back of the train so Thomas can attach a hook and jump aboard. When Vince tries to follow, his tire explodes, and the car veers off course. Vince has to jump before the hook falls and the car crashes. At that moment, a Wicked aircraft appears and opens fire, forcing Jorge and Brenda to flee to avoid being killed. Thomas and Vince run across the train, spotting soldiers pursuing them. The two jump off, and Vince plants a bomb while Thomas shoots at the guards. The dynamite explodes, throwing the soldiers back and detaching the last few carriages from the train. Meanwhile, the aircraft continues chasing Jorge and Brenda, who stop their vehicle and pretend to surrender. When soldiers disembark from the aircraft to arrest them, they fall into a trap set on the ground. Rebels emerge from hiding and surround the soldiers, blocking the pilot's path, allowing the rebels to hijack the aircraft. Back on the train, other rebels emerge from hiding. Newt begins detaching the carriages from the train's main body. Wicked soldiers arrive and open fire, forcing Thomas and his friends to focus on returning fire. At this point, the aircraft reappears, lowering a hook that they attach to the roof of a train carriage. The team climbs aboard quickly, with Vince jumping at the last moment to avoid being left behind. The aircraft then drops the carriage at the rebels' hideout, freeing all the prisoners. However, Thomas is distressed to realize his friend Minho is not among them. Vince gives a speech to the newcomers, explaining that Wicked wanted them because they are immune to the virus and that the serum in their brains could be used to create a cure. But the rebels refuse to conduct experiments on children, so they repair a large ship to escape from the mainland. Thomas asks a rescued boy if he overheard any important information while imprisoned. It turns out the train was heading to a city, which is strange because no cities were supposed to remain. Jorge confirms he was there a few years ago, calling it the Last City, the location of Wicked's main operations base, making an attack on it nearly impossible. Thomas still wants to go and rescue his friend, but Vince refuses to risk the rebels' safety. At that moment, they hear pilots on the radio, prompting the rebels to quickly turn off the lights and hide. Wicked aircraft begin searching the area but find nothing, though they come dangerously close to the hideout, forcing the rebels to prepare to leave soon. At night, while everyone is asleep, Thomas tries to sneak out to rescue Minho on his own, but Newt and Frypan catch him and insist on joining him. Meanwhile, Minho wakes up in the place where he lived during the experiments. He sees some kids in the distance but gets no response when he calls out to them. He then spots another boy running and follows him to a shack, ending up in a mysterious corridor. A door opens, and a creature known as a Griever emerges, forcing Minho to run. The place turns out to be a maze, with blocked paths everywhere. He hears voices discussing his performance and occasionally sees visions of a doctor examining him. Suddenly, his body freezes, but he manages to push through with sheer willpower. He climbs to the ceiling, where the Griever traps him under its claw and roars at him. Minho screams, only to realize he's actually in a lab, undergoing a simulation against his will so Wicked scientists can extract his blood. Later, Thomas's group must pass through a very dark tunnel, where they encounter zombie-like creatures called Cranks. They stop to figure out how to avoid them, but a group of Cranks surrounds the car and starts banging on the doors. The boys speed up, but a Crank jumps onto the windshield and starts smashing it. Ryben drives close to another car to knock the Crank off, but this causes their vehicle to flip over. Fortunately, Thomas breaks a window to rescue them, while Brenda shoots at several Cranks. The kids manage to escape, and Jorge drives them out of the tunnel safely. When they reach the road, they see the Last City in the distance. Jorge notes that Wicked has massive walls around it. Meanwhile, Ava, the head of Wicked, meets with board members, as citizens are losing hope for a cure and the new walls are frightening them. Ava explains that they're extracting serum from Minho and that the cure should be ready soon. But the board members are tired of excuses and want to use their funds to build safe zones. Their discussion is interrupted by Teresa, the girl who betrayed Thomas for Wicked. She gives a speech about hope and sacrifice, convincing the board to continue funding the experiments. Back with Thomas's group, they arrive at the slums outside the wall, where protesters are pleading for help from the city. Thomas is unaware that the tattoo on his neck is glowing, transmitting his location to Wicked. The group hides among the crowd to reach the city's entrance, where guards activate the towers. People are fleeing quickly, and the bullets are causing many explosions and killing hundreds of people. The Thomas team tries to return to their vehicle but gets surrounded by masked men who capture them and take them away in cars. When they arrive at the hideout, these mysterious people, Jorge starts attacking a masked man and doesn't stop until he sees that Brenda is okay. One of the men removes his mask, revealing that it's Gally, who tried to stop the kids in the past and was presumed dead. Thomas lunges at him to attack, but Newt pulls him back and convinces him to listen. Gally informs them that he's on their side now and says he can help them get through the wall. There is a group of rebels here trying to take the city from Wicked. Gally introduces them to the leader, Lawrence, whose face is scarred from the virus and who keeps a serum line connected to his arm at all times to avoid becoming a crank. Lawrence offers Thomas a way to sneak into the city on the condition that he helps him in return. Thomas agrees, so he and Newt will travel with Gally through the sewers while the others stay behind as collateral. Before leaving, Newt notices his hands trembling. At night, the kids finally leave the sewers and enter the city. Gally notices that security has been increased, meaning Wicked knows the rebels are present. They then head to a secret location within the walls where Gally's group has been monitoring the Wicked building for years, but they haven't found a way in because of the soldiers, scanners, and surveillance everywhere. Gally also shows them that Teresa is working there and believes she's their way in. The three return to the hideout to discuss the situation. The group has no issue using Teresa after everything she's done to them, but Thomas doesn't like the idea. Newt gets angry and pushes Thomas against the wall, blaming his hesitation on his feelings for Teresa. Realizing his outburst, he apologizes and leaves the room. Thomas follows him, and Newt eventually admits that he's infected before convincing his friend to agree to use Teresa. Meanwhile, in the lab, Teresa injects an infected girl with the serum made from Minho's blood, healing her instantly. Excited, Teresa goes to inform Minho of the breakthrough, but he doesn't respond at all. As Teresa walks away, Minho attacks her, yelling at her for betraying her friends and blaming her for many deaths. Guards rush in to sedate him, but he manages to steal a hairpin before collapsing. Another scientist takes Teresa to the lab, where she discovers that the serum failed, and the girl has now become a violent crank. At night, Teresa notices Thomas in the crowd and follows him to an empty alley. Thomas asks if she regrets what she's done. Teresa admits she sometimes does, but says she'd do it again. Gally then appears behind her to capture her. Later, they are in an old church for interrogation. Teresa tells the group that Minho is on the third sublevel with 28 other prisoners, and the only way to access it is with an authorized handprint. Gally suggests cutting off someone's finger, but Thomas stops him and forces Teresa to remove the tracking devices from all the kids' necks. While working, Teresa notices that Brenda looks very healthy and uninfected, suspecting that Thomas gave her an injection of his immune blood. Thomas admits he only did it once months ago when they first learned about it. Teresa believes that's impossible, as Brenda should have turned by now, but Thomas refuses to discuss it further. Before Gally takes her away, Teresa steals a piece of gauze with Thomas's blood. The kids then disguise themselves as Wicked soldiers and enter the facility with Teresa, whose presence helps them avoid suspicion. When they reach the stairwell, Gally starts installing a jamming device in the electrical box. While waiting, Newt begins coughing, and Teresa notices he's infected. Once the device is activated, Lawrence's men manage to breach the city's security system. The team rushes to the third sublevel, quickly taking down all the guards in the room. They free all the prisoners from the cells, but Thomas realizes Minho isn't there. Teresa checks the computer and discovers that Minho was taken to the lab on the other side of the building. He's so weak that the harvesting session could kill him. Newt and Thomas force Teresa to lead them there, while Gally stays behind to try and break into the serum storage room. As the three ride the elevator, Ava's right-hand man, Jansen, joins them. Fortunately, he only speaks to Teresa, informing her that Thomas was spotted outside the city. After the three leave the elevator, Teresa starts arguing with the boys. Thomas removes his mask just as Jansen and other guards arrive. Thomas takes Teresa hostage but is pushed away by her, and Newt is shot in the process. As the kids escape, Teresa tells Jansen she did it to trap them, reminding him they need them alive. Alarms go off throughout the building, and Jansen calls for increased security. On the sublevel, Gally finally retrieves the serum and begins moving with all the kids. They reach the garage, where Brenda has stolen a bus, but notices that Thomas and Newt haven't returned. Gally tells her to stay in the bus to protect the kids while he goes back for the others. However, soldiers arrive at the garage, forcing Brenda to leave. Meanwhile, on the upper floors, Thomas and Newt encounter Ava, but are interrupted by Jansen and his men. The kids immediately start running, taking down any guards in their way as they search for their friend. In the lab, Minho hears the commotion and uses the hairpin to stab a scientist. He then knocks out a guard and quickly injects another scientist with a sedative. In the hallway, Newt and Thomas continue fighting soldiers, but their ammunition runs low. Newt throws a grenade to take out the remaining guards, but another man blocks their path. Suddenly, the man is tackled by Minho, who throws him out the window with a loud shout before rejoining his friends. More soldiers arrive, and the kids start running again. Jansen and his men block another corridor, forcing the three to escape into a room with a thick metal door. The guards bring a saw to cut through the door, leaving the kids no choice but to break the window and jump into the pool below. The jump is successful, and they land safely. As they climb out of the pool, more soldiers surround them. Suddenly, one of the men attacks his comrade before removing his mask, revealing himself as Gally. On the street, Brenda is doing what she can to drive the bus as fast as possible. She pushes one of the cars and the one watching knows how to hit it into a pole, but there are still other cars coming behind her. In the end, she turns a corner and finds the whole street blocked with the enemy. Brenda gets out of the bus and fires a missile that he sees at Ray-Ban, who has been waiting all this time inside a winch. The winch hook descends into the middle of the street, and Brenda connects it to the bus before quickly driving away. Frypan uses the winch to lift the bus over the wall. The weight causes the bus bumper to start breaking. That's why Frypan lengthens the chain to make the fall shorter. The bus lands upright on the ground and then falls within seconds. Fortunately, no one gets hurt. At the same time, Teresa uses the stolen screen to analyze Thomas's blood in the lab and discovers that his blood carries the real cure. Not only does it stop the virus, but it also destroys it. She presents this to Ava and tells her they need to find Thomas. Brenda and Frypan take all the kids to the hideout, but they find it empty. It turns out Lawrence went to gather everyone in the slums and announces that tonight they will take the city. With Lawrence at the forefront on a vehicle filled with explosives, the crowd begins running toward the city entrance. The security team tries to activate the towers, but the rebels' hacking disables all their systems. The guards on the walls manually open fire, but it's not enough to stop the vehicle from crashing into the entrance. A massive explosion occurs, creating a large hole in the wall, allowing the crowd to storm into the city. Thomas's team continues to sneak in, helping Newt move as his illness worsens. They hide when they see the police taking to the streets to fight the invaders, but explosions erupt at every corner, forcing them to move quickly. Later, they hide inside a building, and Thomas calls Brenda, telling her to leave without them, but Brenda refuses. At that moment, Jorge appears in a stolen aircraft with Vince to rescue all the kids. Brenda asks them to save Thomas, too. The kids see the aircraft and begin moving toward the meeting spot, but Newt can barely move. Thomas tells Minho and Gally to go ahead with the cure while he stays with his friend. Newt gives Thomas a necklace and asks him to take care of everyone, but Thomas refuses to leave him and starts carrying him. As Newt finally loses consciousness, Teresa broadcasts her voice throughout the city, announcing that Thomas's blood can truly cure the infected and that they can save Newt, urging him to return. Meanwhile, Minho and Gally make it to the aircraft. As Thomas ponders what to do, Newt wakes up as a zombie and attacks him. The boys struggle and wrestle on the ground. When Newt asks his friend to end it, Thomas refuses to kill him, continuing to fight in hopes of buying time. Newt apologizes and grabs a gun to do it himself, but Thomas quickly knocks it out of his hand. Newt then loses the last shred of his sanity, grabs a knife and tries to stab Thomas, managing to injure him slightly before Thomas kicks him away. When Newt attacks again, the boys collide, leaving Thomas with no choice but to stab Newt with the knife, killing him. As Thomas cries over his friend, the others arrive with the cure, but it's too late. Instead of leaving with the team, an enraged Thomas returns to the Wicked building and finds Ava, who tells him she can save them all. Thomas drops his weapon and offers his body to develop the cure after extracting a promise from Ava to leave the others alone. At that moment, Jansen shoots Ava dead and then sedates Thomas. Later, Thomas wakes up strapped to a stretcher in a lab where Teresa draws his blood to create the cure. Jansen reveals that the cure will only be distributed to the elite and wealthy. Before he can inject himself with the new cure, Teresa smashes a glass over his head, knocking him out. She then frees Thomas, but Jansen grabs her and throws her across the room. They begin fighting over the cure, with Jansen even slamming her head against a table. Thomas tackles Jansen, pushing him out the window, and their fight continues in the hallway. Jansen nearly overpowers Thomas, but he refuses to give up. As the fight escalates, Jansen pulls out a gun, threatening to kill the teenagers. At that moment, the rebels fire rockets at the building, knocking Jansen down and allowing the two to escape. They hide in a lab where some cranks are trapped in cells. Teresa is shocked to discover that Thomas was severely injured in the explosion. Jansen comes looking for them, so Teresa distracts him. Thomas throws something at the cell door, breaking it. The cranks attack and start devouring Jansen, giving the kids a chance to escape. Teresa helps Thomas move, and they make it to the rooftop, only to find the building slowly burning down. They think it's the end. Teresa apologizes for everything. The rebels arrive in the aircraft, but can't get close enough due to the fire. As the adjacent building collapses and the aircraft shakes, Teresa throws Thomas to the group, who manage to catch him just in time. Teresa doesn't follow and dies as the building collapses beneath her. Thomas cries for her before losing consciousness. Later, the survivors use the repaired ship to reach a safe island and begin building a new home. Thomas recovers from his injury and finds Newt's necklace, discovering a message thanking him for everything and asking him to take care of everyone. In this new home, the survivors carve the names of the fallen fighters onto a large rock, just as they did in the maze trials. After adding Teresa's name, Thomas looks out at the shore, holding a sample of the cure. And that's the end of the movie. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button so you never miss an updates.